the screen? Okay, I think it's working. That's so weird. Okay. Enter presentation. Okay. So hello, everybody. Not having your mouse appear the one time you're doing something really important is a little annoying, but hey, things open, so that's great. So I'm Jessica Weinberg. I'm the Vision Zero Policy Director for the City of Milwaukee. I am so thankful that you guys are all sharing your time with us today as we move through this Vision Zero planning process. Our goal, as Hannah said, is really to review some past recommendations and see if we can move them forward to create a Vision Zero plan. You know, all of us live in Milwaukee and we know, live or experience Milwaukee. I know that we really do have a major traffic safety problem. And because of how serious it is, we want to move to action just absolutely as fast as we can. So we're going to some past plans and sharing them with you to help develop a future plan. That's the overview, but I'll get into it a little more. And then the agenda, you know, along with what Hannah said, but I just want to share again, you know, here's our agenda for today. We're going to save the we'll do some introductions also in our small groups when we break out, because we do have enough people that we don't want to take up too much time, but thanks for everyone who's saying who they are on the chat. And we have a good diversity of experience there. So I'll talk about some Vision Zero principles, planning process overview. The bulk of the meeting will be breaking into those small groups to reflect and review these recommendations, think about if there's new things, and then we'll do some sharing out and some next steps. And as I go through this, please ask questions, especially, you know, we're going to go through some principles and data, and people might, you know, have some questions, so please share away. So the City of Milwaukee Vision Zero goal is that we should have no deaths or serious injuries on our roadways by 2037. So all departments of the city are really focused on this long-term goal and taking the actions year by year to get there. And we need some more community input on what that plan should be to help us get there. Lots of cities across the country are doing this. A few places have been successful and have gotten down to zero. Hoboken, New Jersey is one. There isn't yet a major city that has, but we're all working towards it and seeing really good progress. So just what is Vision Zero and kind of what makes it different than how we've been doing traffic safety in the past is something I want to share. So these are some of the key principles we use when we think about this new approach to road safety. One is that death and serious injury is unacceptable. And this sounds very obvious, but I want to share that it actually really is a big change. Frequently, departments of transportation just look at crash numbers, and they're just like, we want to bring down crashes. Well, the easiest crashes to bring down and address might actually be the ones that have no human impact, where it's just property damage. And so we kind of build a system that's good at minimizing property damage, but we haven't gotten to the really important and more impactful work of like, how do we keep people safe in the system? And that's what we want to reorient around. People are the center. We're not going to let people die going where they need to go. That is a basic thing everyone should get to do. Humans also make mistakes. We're not going to say that every crash, oh, well, that individual made a poor choice and that's why that happened and we're absolved from responsibility. Humans are going to make mistakes, and we need our system, including our transportation system, to allow some basic mistakes without super big penalties. Humans are vulnerable. Our human bodies are, you know, very tender and breakable, and we need to design for those human bodies, not necessarily feel like a strong steel car. Responsibility is shared. This is, you know, between the people, the public, government, all sorts of things. Like we all have a role in how the system works. Safety is proactive. We really want to focus on prevention, not on addressing the outcomes, but on preventing the outcomes. And then redundancy is crucial. So I think we all learned through the pandemic that, you know, a basic public health approach is that you need layers of different preventative measures to have the biggest impacts. And that's really what we need in our transportation space as well, that we're not only relying on one sort of intervention, but there's a layered approach, which also means that if there's a failure in one, the other ones catch that situation and improve it and keep it from having a negative outcome. Please do ask questions if you have them. Another key element of Vision Zero is that we really recognize that speed is the main issue that's causing death and life-changing injuries. And it's, heavy cars going fast. It's not somebody running fast or biking fast. That's the problem. It's cars going fast, and when they hit human bodies or even other vehicles, there's bad impacts. So there's this good data out there that, sadly, even at 30, 40% of, if you hit a pedestrian when you're going 30, 40% of those people will die or have a severe injury. But that number really jumps down to only 13% at 20. And so there's this big push in cities to really be getting the speed limit and the operating speeds under 30 and as close to 20 as you can. And you can see that when you move up the other way towards 40, there's a huge negative impact in the outcomes if you're driving 40 instead of 30. And I think when we look at our fatality numbers, and if the speeding experience in Milwaukee and how fast people are going, if almost everybody's going 40, when there's a crash, the chance of a severe fatality or injury is so much higher. And with a pedestrian, it would be 73%. So these small amounts really matter in speed. I want to give some kind of data, just like where we're at. And this is all kind of setting the table so that when you look at the recommendations, you have this context to be able to analyze, if you think they're good ideas or bad ideas. So Milwaukee traffic deaths have gone through an interesting and very sad change. We used to have, before 2014, like relatively low numbers. The average number of people killed on our roadways was 40 per year. That is 40 too many. But our average was really was 40. 2 years ago, we had our record high, and that was 88 people, more than doubling what we used to be our average. Last year, we've made some progress again in the right direction. We were down to 73 people killed on our streets, but that again is still just like way too high. So there's been this shift since 2014 with much higher numbers. And that's really partially what's driving this like deep commitment to trying to fix this, because almost 100 people dying per year on our roads is obscene and unnecessary, and we're gonna work to stop it. Does anyone have any questions on this data? Excuse me.
Yeah, Jessica, I just asked in the chat, is it city or county?
This is city.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And then just a few local key facts that kind of have emerged from looking at lots of wonderful reports and research that others have done that I think are important. So vulnerable users, that's people walking, biking, or motorcycling, are overrepresented in traffic deaths and serious injuries. And the streets that are designed with pedestrian safety in mind end up being safe for everybody. So kind of the inverse of this is true as well. If you design for the most vulnerable, then everybody's safe, including people driving. Our current system really puts these vulnerable users, which definitely includes transit users, when they're walking to and from their bus stop. When you're on transit, it's incredibly safe. But as a pedestrian, there's still some concerns. Serious crashes are really geographically concentrated on certain streets. 10% of the streets within the city of Milwaukee have 58% of the fatal crashes. We call this the high injury network. And the city owns only 65% of the high injury network. 31% of those miles are state-owned and 4% are county-owned. And this is just to highlight that, we need a cross-governmental approach to solving these things and really value our partnerships with the county and the state and want to see those flourish. Sadly, 32% of our crashes are hit and runs, and this is triple the statewide average. And I think this is really important because we're kind of missing almost a third of our crash data is completely one-sided, and we don't know anything about what the driver did or what was going on. So just all of our data, I think, comes with this caveat that 32% are hit and runs. We definitely know the outcomes. We know the injury outcomes for the people that are there, but some of the other details, like was the driver drunk? How fast were they going? Like, we don't have that information too readily. And then sadly, we have low seatbelt use. And there's a study this summer that showed that, and this is just in Milwaukee, that we're just analyzing Milwaukee data, that of the people that were inside a car and were killed in crashes, 70% of them were not wearing a seatbelt. So our like kind of biggest car occupant issue may actually be seatbelts. Of course, speed plays a huge role in that too. If everyone's going slower, either the crash won't occur or you maybe won't even need that seatbelt. But in our current system, that's kind of a short-term potential area to think about. Again, we want to have that multi-layered approach. So we're not going to become a seatbelt campaign program. But I also think that this data point needs some attention and is interesting. Are there questions on this?
Is it possible to see the map? I'm very curious about like what the streets are that are the high injury streets.
Yeah, in the notes, I could share a link to that high injury network, and I'd be happy to. And there's a really good report about that. I don't want to mess up my presentation and the flow of everything right now and pulling that up, and I'm worried we'll run out of time, but I can share that.
I'll find it and pull it up and share in the chat.
Oh, thank you so much. And Albert, did you raise your hand and have a question?
Hey, good morning, everybody. My question is in regards to the low seatbelt use. Is there data tracking like from 2014 on that percentage and the people that were killed in cars that were 70% of the people there? Is that like a trend? Is that like I guess what I'm asking is like due to not wearing a seatbelt, say in 2014, are those numbers still the same?
Yeah, that is a very good question. The piece that I was reading was just a 1-year survey, and it didn't have data going back into past years, but that's a really good question.
Okay,
to look
so
at. I made a note.
so what year was this data with the 70%?
It was for 2022.
For 20.
Analysis was done in 2023 and looking at 2022 data.
Okay, understood. All right. Okay, well, I guess the next question is like, okay, now if 70% of the people, it's hard to quantify the data when you're thinking about like, okay, if pedestrians were killed, so to speak, you know what I mean? So how does that translate to the people in cars, if that makes sense? Actually inside the car or outside the car?
Right. Yeah, definitely. We want to hold, that's kind of why I have this like 0.1 and 0.4 over here for these facts, is that 0.1 is really vulnerable users are uniquely vulnerable and at risk on our current system. So that's people outside of cars. Cars do offer a lot of good protection. And there's lots of efforts that we want to do there. And that is where a lot of our incidents occur. But as on the flip side is also to like look at why are people in cars dying, and speeding is probably involved in 99% of our crashes. So again, that is like this fundamental issue that we want to address speeding. And there's just this kind of curious fact about the seatbelt use that I hope we'll workshop it a little bit in these small groups to think about like what does that mean and what can we do. So now I'm gonna switch over to giving a planning process overview, kind of sharing where we're at and what we're going to do next. So I want to say that, overall, the goal is to really respect all these past planning efforts that have happened where tons of people have given input, and we want to review those items, see what's been done, what hasn't been done, and see if it still makes sense to carry forward as a recommendation. And in large part, that's about kind of respecting the past input. Lots of people have given really great ideas. And moving into action as quickly as possible. Another thing I've been hearing a lot is like, please don't, we're kind of planned to death. We've done lots of planning. Let's really move to action. And so this process has been set up to be as efficient and quick moving as possible. But I'll give a little more detail. So, it's been at least since 2010. I mean, you could pick any year probably. In the past that, people in Milwaukee, both the government and residents, have really been trying to make our streets safer for lots of different users. In 2010, we adopted the bike plan, 2018, a complete streets policy, 2019, the pedestrian plan, 2020, a carjacking and reckless driving task force report. In 2021, the Safe Routes to School strategic plan was adopted. 2022, Vision Zero was adopted. And last year, there was the climate and equity plan, the downtown plan, and the Milwaukee crash analysis, which some of the data came from that I mentioned before. And all of these plans have some recommendation. So they have, tons of recommendations, and many of the recommendations in those plans have been implemented, but some haven't, and they're very relevant for Vision Zero. Vision Zero is just kind of a new umbrella to be looking at traffic safety, but the community and the city have been looking at it, for these past 15 years. And so I've gone through all of these plans and tried to pull out the recommendations that are relevant to Vision Zero and that have not been implemented yet. Many recommendations have been implemented, including, ongoing safe routes to school education, and refunding driver's ed at the state level, having a traffic safety unit at the police. Those are some really major achievements that have been implemented. So while before I showed you all the plans and over time where they came from, but I also want to just kind of lay out this Vision Zero planning process. And so like I said, through those other plans, thousands of community members have shared ideas and issues around traffic safety that resulted in hundreds of plan recommendations. Again, many of those were implemented. And I just want to applaud anybody on this call who is, given feedback, shared an idea, attended a meeting about traffic safety, or is implementing some sort of program solution. I know lots of people on this call have participated over time. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate it. Now we're moving into this area where we have about 50 Vision Zero related recommendations that have kind of come through this process. Today, we're at this fourth arrow. We're going to be reviewing those 50 recommendations. What is this group and a few other groups that I'm going to talk to think about them? Are they good? Are they bad? Do they need to change? Once we have kind of an updated list of those recommendations, those will go out for public comment and then help inform a final plan, which will get adopted. Then we'll implement it. Then we'll do annual or biannual community outreach to update the plan and feedback into any sort of, update or updating our adopted plan as needed. So I want people to know that although this process is trying to be as fast as possible with a plan adopted in June at the latest, I'm hoping earlier. Don't think of this as like the door is closing on your opportunity to engage with the plan or to shape it. We're gonna most on an annual or every 2-year basis really be diving into these recommendations. Are they working or not? What needs to change? And having a lot of public comment in that process. So please know that there's ongoing opportunities for updates and improvements. Oh, yeah, look, that's where we are. So now it's going to be time for us to go into our breakout group activity. Are there any questions about this broader process, where we are, why we're doing what we're doing?
Were you able to identify demographics of people that participated?
No, not across all of these plans. I could look into that. And moving forward, we do want to collect that. Because I was actually thinking if I had more time, I was going to go to each plan and see how many people exactly like participated in their outreach and add them all up and give you some cool exact number. But I had general numbers, not specific numbers, but I should look at the demographic info as well to make sure we're representative. Any other questions? Okay, so I'm gonna give an overview of our breakout activity together as a group. But you'll go into, you'll pick a room to go in a topic area. And these directions will be shared again, and then you'll move into the activity. Excuse me. So overall, you're first gonna select which theme of recommendations interests you the most. So that big group of 50 was divided. Really 3 natural groups kind of emerged to group the recommendations. So one is community engagement, and that's, you know, it's the broadest version of community engagement you can think of. So this includes outreach, education, some root causes, and Robert will be leading that breakout group. We have a policy group. So this can be justice system reform, state and federal law changes, regulations. I'll be leading that group. And then we have safe street design, really the built environment. How are our roads looking? What are we doing with the public right of way? How should we conceptualize that? And Amanda will be leading that group. So we'll take a second. We don't quite go into your breakout room yet. We'll finish these directions and then we'll go in. But I'll overview the activity. So we're using a red light, green light theme to simplify this. So you'll have, you know, about 15 recommendations in your topic area that you're interested in. And for each of those recommendations as a group, kind of talk through what's the status of this? Is it a red light, yellow light, or green light? So red light is you don't like it, it doesn't make sense anymore. Maybe it's repeating, it should get removed and not be a recommendation that moves forward. Is it a yellow light? It needs some editing, there's some changes. And you can either, if you have time, edit it to be what you think it should be, or just say like, this needs more detail, or, you know, you can also just give the direction of where you think the edit should generally be headed. And then green light would be, this recommendation is great, this is important, approve it, keep it in the plan moving forward. And then we'll be in those small groups for about 25 minutes, and then we'll come back and share out a little bit. Does anyone have questions about that process? And I'll just highlight, you pick which group you want to go into, if it's community engagement, policy, or safe street design.
So I just opened up the room, so you should be able to pick which one you want to go to, but please feel free to speak out or let me know if you have any questions. And for the folks going into that third group on safe street design, I'll be in a minute or so, but I'm going to make sure that everyone else gets into the rooms, and then I'll join the rest of you.
And then random question, Amanda. Is it easy to navigate between the groups?
Yeah, you should be able to leave. There should be an option to like leave the breakout group on the like where the end button usually is, like at the
Sure.
bottom right corner of
Okay.
your screen.
Okay.
So you can leave and then pick another group to go into if you'd like.
Okay.
I guess
Yeah.
I have a question about like, is this are we only gonna be able to get into one breakout room during our time here?
For this conversation, yes, but if you have thoughts, so just pick one. But if you have thoughts on others, we'll share out the materials after, and you can send your comments over email or set up a follow-up conversation with us.
Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, thank you.
And then Terrell, do you have any questions or you want to pick a breakout group?
No, I don't have any questions. I'm going to join the community engagement.
Awesome. You figure out how to do that, or can I help you at all?
I know exactly how to do it.
Awesome. Okay. Then Hannah, I'm gonna leave you here just for a
Okay.
second. If you can linger for like a minute and
Yeah.
then you can join whichever group you want.
That sounds good. Cool. Thanks, Amanda.
No problem.
Hi, Michael.
I'm
As you're
switching over to the yeah,
yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm switching over to the policy one. Mary Beth and I are gonna divide and conquer bike fed staff.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Let us know if you need help with anything. Hi, welcome. Can you hear me?
Yeah, excellent. Say that again.
Hi, Tobias. Can you hear me?
Volume up. Volume up. There we go.
I'll post a message in the chat about where we are at in the meeting if you can't hear me.
You want me to mute?
No, you are totally fine. Can you hear me now? Oh, now you're, oh, there you go.
Yes. I don't hear.
You're cutting in and out. I wonder if your internet connection is not secure, but I did put a message in the chat if you're able to open the chat.
One crazy. No, we ain't in there no more.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. We can share out a little bit of how it went. I don't know if, Robert, do you want to briefly share? I'm also curious, how many did you get through? My group did not.
What I heard to say something? Can you guys hear me?
Terrell, we can hear you.
Yeah, so we got through like 3 or 4, and majority yellow. We looking at it both sides, people that's doing it in the neighborhood and us that's actually seeing the problem. So we're trying to figure out more effective ways to actually see like what we could do, like not have people feel no type of way about us trying to do that, or no type of way about us trying to approach them to the situation and see where we could get the outcome in that, and like not try to make them feel belittled or anything in the situation. Try to figure out ways to actually come in together at the right tone, in the right manner, and actually just see like how we can get on the same page, get eye to eye.
That's an important concept. Thank you. Does the Safe Street Design group want
No,
to?
that's
You were engagement, right, Terrell?
yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. Amanda, do you mind sharing how things went in Safe Street Design?
Yeah, so I pushed my group, so we at least touched on each of them. So thanks everyone for a really good conversation. We, I think, had towards the end had a brief priority conversation. So I think some of the top things that were most important to us are really, there were a couple about aspects of safe street design that we could combine under one umbrella, but that's one of the top priorities for our group. And then also around expanding and connecting bike and pedestrian networks to provide like full connectivities was really important. And then focusing in on that higher injury network specifically. And then also about like making sure to incorporate the transit expansion into design so that we have all forms of different mobilities. And then I made a note of this, but we had a couple of things where we were all not totally sure what each of these meant. And so I had some notes, especially like, what does micro mobility mean? And so like a little more clarification would be helpful there. And then like, what does like an equity-based project prioritization tool look like? And so I made notes, and so we tried to explain it and like figure it out together in our groups, but would love a little bit more clarification that we can send out to folks afterwards. And as we continue to do this activity with different groups, having a little bit more definitions on hand would be helpful. Does anyone from my group have anything else that they want to like highlight or add? We had a great conversation.
Well, thank you. Yeah, looking forward to seeing comments and ideas. In the policy group, we mostly stayed in an area of enforcement and justice system reform. You know, what sort of laws and policies could help us have a more equitable enforcement system, and what should enforcement be, and how could it be not punitive and more rehabilitative. So I think there's no easy answers in that space, but we had a good discussion kind of on multiple sides of some issues. We did also touch on a few like high-tech solutions that are kind of emerging in the field, such as speed governors. It's called intelligent speed assist, but there could be a computer on either new cars or cars of people who have been in dangerous driving situations that their car can't go over the speed limit. that is like an interesting kind of thing to think about. But how does that fit into our society and what values we have? So those were interesting conversations. We are like moving so fast, but I do, oh, I'm gonna share my screen a little bit, sorry. Again. Okay, so thanks for those. I took a few quick notes on the groups. But there's 3 other questions I wanted us to answer here, and either share answers in the chat or please shout them out. So, were there any big ideas or recommendations that you thought were missing? I guess this might be hard to answer because you don't know what was in the other groups. But if you just think if there was, just something, a really large omission or a broad question you have, please share that. And then also, who else should be reviewing these recommendations? Are there any key stakeholders or organizations that, as you went through your group's area, that you're like, oh, this person or this organization would really have a stake or an insight into what this should be? Because I want to take these to quite a few other groups in the coming month and continue to refine them. And then lastly, does anyone want a quicker Vision Zero presentation, in your organization or in a neighborhood meeting that you might be a part of? I'm trying to break this down into a more simple kind of 15-minute interactive presentation to get people's thoughts on some of the bigger ideas. And I'd really love to go to as many venues as possible. If any of you are interested in hosting a quick presentation, we can join an existing agenda that you might have. So I'm sorry, I asked 3 questions. Does anyone have thoughts on any of them?
Let's start with the first one. How about we just do like, what else was missing? So I see Rick in the chat added like roundabouts at major intersections is something we didn't fully discuss. So adding that to the list. Any other thoughts on that, ideas, or any other things that were missing from the recommendations?
Yeah, I have a thought. This is Jeff Sponcia, Milwaukee County. We did actually mention this in the breakout group at the end, but I think they classify it as modal shift, essentially, making the transportation network easier for people, for residents to use other modes of transportation, right? Not just their cars. And so, the less drivers on the road, you would hope that there would be less crashes and fewer fatalities. But I also think hand in hand that goes with the reduction or elimination of free parking in as many places, public or private, as possible. Just, I don't know if that's even, something that the city would want to, broach, as it is also a revenue generator. But we all know that we're less likely to drive somewhere where we have to pay a lot of money for parking.
Yeah, that's a good point. Other thoughts on anything that's missing?
One of our team members brought this up in our group, but it made me think also about just accessibility within the transportation network. It was kind of implied in some of the initiatives, but just calling out whether there are accommodations or adaptations that might be needed in different parts of the network or the system.
Yeah, that's a good comment. We should be very clear about that. The ADA is super important, and we need law and required, and we need to make everything accessible.
And lastly, I think translation may fall into some of that, or having things in different languages that may be non-English as a primary.
Maybe a little bit to what Lauren just said reminded me of it, but we talk a lot about like getting people who to like change their current behaviors, but I'd also just love for us to talk about there are a lot of people who are either engaging safely or don't drive at all. Like it's almost a fifth of our population that has as a household that doesn't drive at all. I think sometimes we focus a lot on how to be like shift people out of there, but also saying this is a population we want to serve too. When we talk about things that are specifically related to non-driving, and hey, actually the way we're serving those people benefits drivers also. So I think sometimes people react very strongly when they're like, you're asking me to change my thing, but actually we also need to be saying like, let's put in some equity into this of serving the people who already exist across our city. Yeah.
Yeah, Albert, go ahead. I see your hands raised.
One of the things I wanted to just came to mind, but the idea of like, you know how like I would say Geico or whatever, they have you get this little box in your car, and they tell you how you driving and stuff like that. I think that should be like a requirement if you get into some speeding or some reckless driving, like um not only you to raise your insurance, of course, because you have to have required insurance, but it can take away your license if you keep on driving that way, you know. But again, it's like those that are doing the driving, more like they don't even have a license anyway, if that's even don't even make any kind of sense. But there's some kind of way where um, maybe even the authorities can have access to those kind of things. Like, okay, this person's still doing the same kind of reckless driving. We really need to take it up a notch on the consequence side.
Does anyone have any ideas of key groups or people that should review these recommendations at this level? Again, they'll also go to the public, but who should kind of be in this winnowing stage?
I think I've got a crew of people at MPS that would be really good to meet with the family engagement coordinators for the regions who all supervise the parent coordinators. I think that's the right piece at MPS to tap into. As you know what, Jessica, I'm always trying to coming from the FIAD department for everybody, trying to like figure out wait, how do we actually tackle the transportation piece here? So I got a crew for you there, and I think that might be some policy stuff to learn from them.
It'd be fabulous.
What Mary Beth was saying, those folks who aren't primarily drivers, I don't know how active, like, do we have like a transit riders union or anything? Like, there's not necessarily like the organization of people who don't drive, like there's not necessarily one entity to reach out to, so I don't know necessarily how you might reach those folks. You might just have to like target some key, census tracts or zip codes, or something like that. But yeah, making sure that like we're not only asking drivers their input on like the road plan, but like everyone else who's using those roads too.
Good point. Very good point. And I guess maybe be in touch if you know of a community organization or yourself are part of one that would like to have a meeting, and maybe you're like, oh, the people we serve, either they drive or they don't, but we want to, if you want to help get their opinion into this process, I'd love the chance to present and hear from them and get some feedback.
So Jessica, to add to that, in our group, I think one of the organizations, I believe that's on here is Fathers Making Progress, and they have a mobile team that goes out to mobilize fathers, and they have a process where they pose a number of questions to gather data on what fathers are in need, and demographics and things like that. So that can be an opportunity that could arise as well, to be a part, have those conversations around recommendations, and including that in some of their processes.
Awesome, thank you.
I just have one more group. If there already isn't someone in the space from Disability Rights Wisconsin, I'm still kind of on my accommodations and accessibility track here. Sorry, y'all, I'm a nurse. But I know that they definitely have their lane in public policy and engagement and outreach and a lot of different things with as a subject matter expert in that space.
That is a very good point. Thank you for bringing that up. No apology needed at all. It's a great place to bring this up. Thank you. Okay, so very briefly, I'll share my screen again, just to kind of close us out.
Really quick, it looks like Albert has his hand raised. Did you have a question or comment, Albert, before Jessica moves on?
Yeah, I was just thinking like maybe we can, sir, I'm on a meeting here. I was thinking like maybe we can bring the judges, those who are prosecuting, the prosecutor and neighborhood community members, and we can all talk about it on how this all looks, as a collective, not just a one-sided thing, but having all stakeholders at the table.
That is a great point. And yeah, I do kind of wonder if these theme groups that we all went into could turn into subcommittees for Vision Zero that really do ongoing work in each of these areas. And within the policy one, justice system reform and having everybody at the table would be a great way to move forward on that. So I just want to share kind of what our goals are for the next 6 months. So I'm really trying to streamline and review these 50 recommendations. So thank you so much. You guys did like this first public review. There's going to be a few more groups that do the same process, a few key stakeholders that seem like, they really would have impact and insight into these. And then that refined list will go out for public comment along with the draft plan. And then we'll work to have that final plan and adopt it. Again, goal is June for adoption. I don't know, it's hard to even throw out a goal. You just never know how short or how long these processes could be. But I want everyone to know, like, the city is also, while we're doing this planning process, we are super active and not stopping a lot of the activities we're doing to make our streets safer. So tons of big federal grants are being pursued in one, street designs are changing. We have good partnerships with MPS and, driver's ed classes are going to be free for reduced, people who are eligible for free and reduced price lunch. So there's lots of positives that are moving forward, but we really need to think about like this next level of change, and you're playing a key role in determining that. So once these 50 recommendations go through this initial kind of community review, we're also going to be doing a lot of public outreach, and I would love next week to share with you guys some details about an online survey that you can share with people, how to request a meeting, a presentation at your own community meeting, 2 open houses that we're going to be hosting, one at Mitchell Library and one at the Office of African American Affairs. And then also there is a community advisory committee. If anybody wants to join that, that's a group. Some of you are members, but that group is helping to oversee this planning process. And if you really want to be engaged kind of, at a policy level across the whole city, please be in touch with me. You're welcome to join that group. And I do think that over time, very likely there will be these subcommittees that are divided more by action area. And so if you're interested, we could do that in the future. And I guess my last question is, I know at least 2 of the groups, we didn't get through all the recommendations, and even if you got through your groups, you didn't get to see the other ones. I'm kind of wondering if people would be willing to do this a second time, but we would just focus on the recommendations, not do all that intro stuff, but have another like 45-minute, small group discussions, and you could join a different group or the same group and see if we could make a little more progress. Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Or I also can just send out the meeting and you can say yes or no. That's the best way to get your vote.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then yeah, so most likely I'll send out an email next week with a bunch of outreach info, maybe also an invitation to repeat this meeting. If you're interested, no pressure. Everyone's involvement today was super helpful, but if you felt like you want to continue to workshop some of these things, we need your input and appreciate it. Very briefly, I guess, touch on this, that, we're continuing to implement Vision Zero and safety over speed in our designs. Really trying to focus improvement dollars on the high injury network. Later this year, we'll be launching an anti-speeding education campaign. That's with a professional communications and behavior change consultant that's really helping us have a appropriate targeted message that we think will drive behavior change. It's not just like, we don't want people to just know about the campaign. We want to see behavior change. And we're working really hard on that. I will be hiring a full-time community outreach worker, as well as a team of part-time youth outreach staff. And so I just, anyone in this call, I think you would be great candidates if you, are passionate about this work and want to be more engaged. And I will send that out when that's posted. And then we're just always seeking, funding and partners and new ideas. Even as we're trying to write a plan down, we're getting new ideas all the time. So that's the end of today's meeting. And I just want to say thank you. Please email me if you have questions, comments, ideas. Thank you so much. I don't know, Amanda, Hannah, Robert, do you guys have any final words before we say goodbye?
No, I think you covered it. Thanks so much again for joining, everyone, and for your participation. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely afternoon.
Yeah, y'all have a good rest of y'all day. Thank y'all so much for the training.
Thank you.
We appreciate having you, Terrell, and everybody else.
I will definitely be looking forward to seeing your email, so I will definitely contact you back as soon as I get it.
Super. Thank you.
No, thank you. Y'all have a good rest of y'all day. See y'all later.
Okay, you too. We did it.